All right, we're here. Another episode of True Strength Life podcast. I'm here with my good buddy Marcus Tatum. You guys should know him if you've been listening to the podcast. He's been a frequent guest and even fill in Daily Words of Wisdom. Did a lot of those for me, and I'm hoping to have him as a just on here many times from now and into the future. Whether he's in studio with me or in studio, that sounded funny, but it's true, in studio with me or even like this, just somebody, a smart guy to get some commentary from, just of what may be going on. And obviously there's a lot going on right now, so we wanted to have this conversation. Him and I have been talking a lot back and forth recently and even today. So I said, why don't we just get on a call and put it out there and let people hear some thoughts we might have. For anybody that doesn't know, give them a little bit of who you are.
Sure. Who am I? So as Aaron just said, my name is Marcus Tatum. I like to think of myself as a cultural commentator, but more so because I feel like as believers, we are ambassadors for Christ. And so really just commentating or giving commentary on, I guess, how the gospel should be influencing our culture and how we can influence others by living as Christ lived. So I guess that's kind of the idea of what I want my personal ministry to be. And so, and as if you heard from me before, that also bleeds into politics, that bleeds into just everyday life, what it means to be a husband. I'm not a father yet, but, I know as Aaron's walking through that stage of life, it's kind of just kind of meditating on those things, understanding what Christ calls us to be within those roles and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Cool. And you're not a cultural commentator just because you're black.
No. No. Although I got a lot of things to say about that.
Yeah, we both do. So where do we even want to start? Do we just want to jump into virus stuff, or?
I think that's the most pressing thing. I think we can start there.
Okay. How do we want to start that? I guess how has it affected your life? And we'll just go there. Start there.
Yeah, no, that's good. How's it affected my life? So I had recently just got employed, probably about a month before all of this went down, at a Christian school in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Some may be familiar with the King's Christian School. And so I was working there, and obviously schools are kind of the first institutions to really be shut down or closed or affected really in any way. It was the schools.
Yeah.
So, we were kind of the last school in the district to really be like, okay, maybe we should shut this thing down. As being a private school, it kind of you get to kind of do what you want because you're not beholden to the state. And the government and their funding. And so you don't necessarily abide by the same rules and regulations. So we kind of call our own shots, but at the same time, we're not stupid. So the school did end up shutting down. And so that's kind of where we were. So not only did I get a guaranteed 2-week break, but eventually, since they put an indefinite hold or close on the school to students, they actually went ahead and let me go. It is somewhat temporary. They did agree and confirm that they would hire me back whenever they do come back. But I guess just legally, they couldn't continue to pay me and not have me there putting hours in. And so they had to let me go. So that's how it's affected me personally. My wife is a social worker in the state of New Jersey. And that's honestly been scary for us because they were really slow getting kind of on top of things. So she was in homes, with children, foster parents. Come to find out, my wife actually came into contact with a kid whose foster parent was in contact with someone who did test positive in Glassboro. They actually worked together. And so that was kind of initially what actually made me and my wife decide we were going to go into self-quarantine and be cautious and careful about things. So it's definitely affected us.
I guess I should kind of answer that same question. Honestly, I kind of have a different story so far. Well, what I don't even know what today's date is. The 26th,
25th. I don't know.
One of those.
Something like that.
But in March 26th, whatever it is. To this day, it hasn't honestly affected me too much. The biggest way it's probably affected me is our church. Obviously, like every other church, basically, it's not meeting. So we're not doing any of our normal things. This past Sunday, we did live stream, so we were able to take part in that way. Our pastor did do a message. We had music and we had a message, so that was pretty cool. Got to even experience that with our family and also a couple of really good friends. So which who those two people they're not normally there at our church. Right. So that was cool. Yeah. And then we watched their church. As far as work and all, it's still, I've worked every day. It still hasn't really slowed that down yet. I won't be surprised if it does. If we do get to a point where either customers are not wanting to do work anymore, or the government shuts us down, like basically has a full shutdown and tells us we can't. I won't be surprised if that happens. But like I said, up to this point, not really affected a whole lot.
Yeah.
Taking the typical precautions. I haven't really shook hands with too many customers like I always do. I'm kind of one of those guys that shakes hands with everybody as much as possible.
Right.
But I think I've only shaken hands with 2 customers so far, and I've met probably 15, and since this all went down.
Right.
And then you're always in the back of your mind, like I get back to the truck, I hand sanitize, that kind of stuff. I guess is always in the back of my mind. My wife and kids, they haven't really gone anywhere other than us going as a family to either my parents' or sister's house. Not having any guests over. So yeah, in that way, it's the socializing aspect, I guess, has changed a little bit. Right. But I think that's everybody.
Yeah. Because that's almost outside of you. It's like if they're not going to come to your house, they're not going to. You can't really do anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we did have a big event we were holding. We were planning for a while because we just bought a house. We're doing a housewarming event, and we had a bunch of people come to that, but people started dropping out, and then we decided to cancel, and we basically canceled right before they announced that they would have made us cancel anyway, the state. So, anybody listening, we're in New Jersey, by the way, in case you didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I just looked up. We have, I think as of yesterday, we have 59 confirmed cases in our county. And I think there's over 300 in the state, or maybe 500. There's
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I just saw it. I was just scrolling on Facebook and I saw Governor Murphy share it, and I don't remember what that number was.
Okay. Now, here's a thought that's been on my mind. I'd like your input. Disclaimer: I am not a health expert, and Marcus is not either. So,
correct. Take
it for however you want to take it. I am a logical guy, though, a reasonable guy. So is Marcus. It's kind of how we think, and a common sense, type of way. So I'm viewing numbers. I'm seeing things that are happening on the news, blah blah blah, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm just thinking, how much? And I'm saying this because I want your commentary on it.
Sure.
How much do you think? Back a couple months ago, when it seemed like everybody was sick, everybody was, like a lot of people had the flu. Everybody just seemed to be getting sick all around me, and I was too. I was pretty sick. I even, didn't work for a few days, which rarely ever happens. How much of that, or do you think at all, that was related to this virus? And so, if it is in your mind, how much of what's going on now do you think, if we knew the numbers of really who from a few months ago leading up to this point, the numbers probably would have been a lot more if we would have started testing back then, but it wasn't
Earlier,
really.
right.
Everyone's thinking, oh, it's flu season, or, this is the typical part of the year. Everybody gets sick, no big deal.
Right.
Where right now we're also still in flu season, we're in allergy season, so there's a lot of people sick with very similar symptoms to this virus. And so I feel like the numbers would probably be even more if we were testing for this.
Right.
But to me, as we're seeing now too, the more positive cases we see now, the number that I look at continually is the death rate, the death percentage of people from this virus.
Right.
And the death rate is going down as the positive cases are going up.
Yeah, the mortality rate.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm even thinking, with what I just said about everybody being sick the past couple months, if say a lot of them were, or some of them were even from this virus, that would mean the death rate is even lower than it is right now.
Right.
So again, I'm not a medical expert. I don't know any part of that sense of this.
Yeah.
But I'm just not scared of it, like, at all. Like, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. No. I hear you. I think that, well, to answer earlier, you asked how much do I think that kind of wave of people getting sick had to do with this virus or anything like that. I think it's twofold. I think because, again, having just been employed at a school too, I mean, part of my job was knowing the attendance. So it was kind of that thing, in the morning, you're like, oh, there's like half a third grade is out, and it was like this thing. We were like, man, this must be a bug going around. You kept hearing the teacher saying it and the office say it. And so, like, I kind of was in that and understanding what was going on and had a pulse on, how many people were sick in general, at least young kids, right? And so, I mean, looking back now, and even with the information that I have now, I don't think that they had the virus. I don't think they had the coronavirus or anything like that. I think it was just a simple bug, whether it's a cold, a flu, whatever. Although you get to know some of the kids and you understand what they're going through. And now I look back and I'm like, well, I guess it could have been. But I think it's twofold. I think that, yeah, there are definitely a huge, well, I won't say huge, but there was definitely a population of people that maybe had this virus long before we even really understood what it was, before we started testing, before we started calculating this data. And then there's also just a bunch of people that, were going through flu season, cold season, were just getting naturally sick. And it wasn't anything more than that. And they've recovered and they've, went through the whole, recovery process. So I think it's in it. And I think with the knowledge, again, that I have now from, medical professionals that I'm hearing, out and about, and then also a lot of nurses and doctors that I go to church with that have kind of even reeled me in from that position that I had, talking to you, just like, this thing's not a big deal. They kind of reeled me in from that, like, nah, it could be a big deal, and I think that's why the precautions are being taken. I think because of the unknown is the biggest
Mm-hmm.
fear that doctors have. I think that's why they're also telling us to kind of have somewhat of a respect for it. Um, Not necessarily that we should be scared, not that we should be panicking, which is actually what I've been hearing from doctors.
Yeah, me too.
Is that no, don't be scared, don't panic. There's nothing to panic about, but there is something to be precaution. Take precautions. And it is important. So, um, yeah, I think it's just been really interesting to watch. I mean, I even remember hearing, I think I read it this morning. Meek Mill had posted about how he had gone through this thing that felt like the flu. He said he couldn't breathe, and it was just really like rough. And he said he remembers thinking that, man, if somebody's older was going through this, they wouldn't survive this. And he literally said that in the post. And now looking back, he thinks he had the virus. But this was in December of 2019.
Yeah.
And so this was just kind of just starting in China. And of course, being a celebrity, he's traveling. So it's very easier to, come into contact with someone that maybe had this virus. But I mean, so to your point, yeah, this could have been around for a while. And a lot of people, I mean, he's since recovered, obviously. So there's a lot of people that probably had this and have recovered. And so that mortality rate, yeah, probably is lower than what we're seeing now. And it will continue to go down. And the doctors are saying that. It's not like they're telling us, oh, be scared, it's going up. No, the mortality rate will end up around 1%, maybe even less than that. But right now, people just see the number outside of the mortality rate, which is the percentage. And I think that's what's really scaring people.
Yeah. Yeah. And people listening, don't get us wrong either. When we say 1%, less than 1%, like we understand those are still human beings and souls,
For sure.
passing away and souls going into eternity. Hopefully, to be with God.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get us twisted on that end. Like it doesn't matter what that number is. It could be one person from all this.
Right.
We still realize that. So I don't want people to think that we're being cold and heartless when we're just talking about numbers. But yeah, for me, I feel like I have this constant battle in my mind from doing what a lot of people. I know that a lot of other people are scared and are taking every precaution necessary. So it makes me, out of respect for them, to make them less nervous, take precautions, on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing that. But when I see things like how this is going to end up, like you said, probably around 1% or less than 1%, especially in the United States. Because when I'm talking about this, I'm basically talking about America. Because I
Sure.
know in Italy it's a different situation,
Right.
but also for different reasons.
Right.
That's important to know too. But so in America, it's probably going to be around 1% or so. But so is like the flu. Like if an old person got a cold, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, they keep saying old people and people with immune problems or respiratory issues. That's in general for any sickness that they get. Like they can't get sick because no matter what they get, it's an issue.
Right. Because of the pre-existing conditions.
Exactly.
For sure.
So I feel like we're making this like, it's like, okay, we get it. They can't get it, but we should have already known they can't get anything anyway.
Right. Yeah, I think your point is ultimately that we're trying to make sure that we have a proper perspective on what's going on. Again, like you said, it's not that we're trying to be cold-hearted or like dismissive of those who are losing their lives, because that's a very real thing that is happening. And especially as believers, we care about life, but it's also having a proper perspective. Like it is something that happens, like the flu. We know that's a real thing. We know cold is a real thing. We know people do lose their lives to those things, and we're not up in arms about it because we have a proper perspective on it. And I think it's just a matter of having a proper perspective on what's going on now. And again, mainly because of the unknown, it's really kind of exaggerated the response and the reaction.
Yeah. So with that being said, you don't hear a lot about positive stuff in right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some positive things that could be happening and could come from this.
Sure.
In my mind, I see how one thing I'm big on is the family unit as a whole, as a team, and all that. And I see how this basically the idea that everybody is home right now. Most people are home. Most people are the whole family is home. There's a lot of families like that.
All right.
I see this as a because you think about it. Um, think outside of something like this happening, there is literally no other situation where you're basically forced in a lot of family situations. You're basically forced to you know be together. There outside of this happening, there's nothing else that would make this time happen where they're all together for
Right.
3, 4, 5, 7 weeks.
Yeah.
You there's nothing like this. You don't they go on vacation. Well, a vacation is a planned out thing that they know is coming, that they're kind of, you're in a different mindset when you're on a vacation. You're not
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
you're not like you're taking this as like almost a lot of people would think of it as an escape from work.
Right. Even an
And
escape from family sometimes
yeah,
too. Yeah.
escape from family, or if your vacation, if a lot of it is where you're just at home,
Yeah.
you might take that escape mindset and uh, put it onto your kids, where you're saying like, oh, daddy's on vacation, mommy's on vacation,
Right.
and so in other words, my point is you're gonna make the kids also feel like, oh, they can be out of routine, they can be out of what they normally do because
Mm.
this is vacation time.
Right.
Where right now, this is not vacation time. This is not a planned out thing. This is like, okay, you're not working anymore. You're at home,
Mm.
and for a while. Okay,
Yeah.
well now, so many families that wouldn't ever get this opportunity
Right.
um, are now trying to figure out basically how to be with each other.
Mm.
And I think we we can't waste this. This
Right.
time should not be wasted
Yeah.
on anything other. If you can name a thing that where you spent most of your time that you were not working doing this, um, and that's all you can think about, and that's all you did this whole time. When you have a family, when you are married, when you have kids, if you did anything other than actually make your family unit stronger, then you failed.
Right. Yeah.
Because you completely wasted this time that you're not going to get through any other situation, probably
Yeah.
ever.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think that that has to be one of the priorities during this time, and I think just from the pulse that I have, from again Facebook friends and just scrolling, it looks like people realize that, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Even non-believers, I think, are prioritizing that. I think that's really cool. I think that's a hopefully an entry into to their hearts softening to the gospel and all of that. And I think that's also the other positive, right? I think people's hearts right now are really softened, to the point where they're more receptive to the gospel, especially
Mhm.
during a time of panic and uncertainty, realizing that they have no control over what's going on. They can't, stop this thing. They can't just pop a couple pills. They don't have the medicine or vaccine or cure for this thing yet.
Yeah.
So there's, I think that makes people feel like, oh, we're in control. So it's really not a big deal. There's absolutely no control that we have in this situation. And I think people recognize that. And of course, they panic by buying toilet paper or food or whatever, which, whatever, we run out, But I think that really softened people's hearts because they were in a place of helplessness. And, they've really started to think, okay, if we're that helpless and, people were being fed that, man, I might die. That really was a prime opportunity, whether it was true or not. It was a prime opportunity for people to really make sure that we're, one can't be, there's scripture that basically says this, one can't be receptive of the gospel unless one goes to teach it, right, or give it or whatever. however you want to kind of reword that.
By hearing.
Right, by hearing the word of God. And so when someone's got to be sent, right? And so I think it's positive not only for the non-believer who needs the gospel, but I think it's also a huge opportunity for believers to kind of wake up and be like, hey, somebody's got to be sent. Somebody's got to go. Somebody's got to preach. Somebody's got to go tell the gospel. And I think that was something that, you know, it was something I knew, and I knew like, oh, this is an awesome opportunity, you know. But I actually sat down and watched a documentary with my wife the other day, and I was convicted more because I was like, yeah, I know to go preach the gospel. Yes, I know to go share the gospel, whatever. But it was almost like in this time, you need to be doing it more. You need to kind of go on like overhaul, do it on steroids almost, like, because man, this is such a unique opportunity. You know, just tell everybody that you come into contact with. And I think, you know, I'm really trying to figure out how to do that, even with writing, which, you know, my the writing ministry that I do online, and stuff like that. It's just, I need to be doing more. And God really convicted me of that, because it's not just, you know, me or you that's going to go reach the world. It's all of us collectively. You know, I'm going to reach some people. You're going to reach some people. Our pastors are going to reach other people. And I think we all just kind of collectively have to do what God's called us particularly to do. And I think we'll reach a lot of people. And I think one last thing, I think that we're praying as a church all the time for a revival, not realizing that for that type of revival that we're normally praying for, we kind of need a whole halt to our world for that to happen.
Yeah.
And you know, God has really made that happen or allowed that to happen. And so we have to kind of do our part and follow through with, you know, he's called us to be the tool and the vessel to preach the gospel, to unreached people groups and so on and so forth, and the people right around the corner from us. So we have to do our part as the church and really take advantage of the opportunity. So there are definitely a lot of positives and a lot of awesome opportunities that God has really put in our path.
Yeah, it's true. Can you hear the dirt bike in the background?
I cannot.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that, you know, with that is the idea that people are going to be watching what we do right now, especially. You know, we as Christians, we always have a microscope on us, but it's even more so now because it's a time of adversity. So, okay, Christian, what do you do right now? How are you handling this right now?
Yeah.
And how a Christian handles themselves in a situation like this, in a hard time, a rough situation, is also a big testimony, an example to really other Christians and non-believers.
Yeah. Yep.
And just and also I think of I'm a practical thinker, so even just I think on a practical level of a day to day, okay, you're home, you have a lot more time available to you now that you typically wouldn't because you're working or something. So now what? Now what are you spending your time doing? So are you reading those books that you've had in the back of your mind for the last 7 years but never got to really any of them? Are you reading are you one, reading more scripture, and are you even reading scripture at all? You know, Christian, you should be thinking about that right now. You know, how many hours are you putting on Netflix, and how many hours are you putting towards video games right now because you feel like you have the time, as compared to you should think that you have the time now to read more scripture, to read more books. I put a link. I made a big post the other day on Facebook of a whole bunch of links to courses you could take. That you could probably, if you spend a lot of time doing them each day, you could probably get them done within a week or two, which you have right now. You have that time. So are we wasting this time? Again, watching a bunch of TV, playing a bunch of video games, and even not on the learning side, but I would hope that you're spending a lot of time outside with your kids, even inside with your kids. I'm hoping that you're building up your family during this time. But this is also a time where you have the ability to learn and gain more knowledge in areas that you've been wanting to, but felt like you didn't have the time to. Because isn't that everybody's excuse? Where,
Yeah,
you
that's the
know,
easiest excuse, and even if it's really not a real one, I mean, that's I just don't have the time. It's
yeah.
so easy to say that. Yeah, for sure.
How many people? We'll leave even extra books out of that. How many Christians say like, "Oh, I didn't read scripture this week. I didn't read scripture. It's been a month since I picked up the Bible. I just feel like I don't have time. I'm just so busy." Well, first of all, that's just an excuse. You should get rid of that. That's garbage.
Yeah,
You're on Facebook for 20 minutes a day at least.
at
Where
least. Yeah.
okay,
Oh
let's
gosh.
cut your Facebook time in half and
Yeah.
pick up a Bible.
Yeah.
Open the Bible app on your phone because you have that to make yourself look like a good Christian. But when was the last time you opened it?
Yeah.
So you can tell I can go on and on about this stuff.
Yeah.
So let's be working on that stuff.
Yeah.
Let's grow in this time.
Mm.
Again, when else are you going to get this time? When else are you going to get time like this where you can do that?
Yeah.
So I'm saying all this because I'm just hoping that you're doing it. If you're listening, I'm hoping that you're doing it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I went through even this past week. I just went through that whole like, man, I'm watching a little too much Netflix. Like, and I'm like I said a couple days ago, kind of just had the light bulb of that conviction of like you need to be doing more. And so I mean, that includes making content so that we're reaching people, but then also, last night my wife and I were able to get in the Word, and just pray. And it's, that's just time that we, because you get home at 6, 7 o'clock. By then you think about dinner, and then after that, maybe you watch a TV show and go to bed.
yeah,
But man, there's just so much time to just like slow things down and be like, all right, what are we doing right now? Let's just get in the Word. And yeah, my family needs this time, to build and to grow and all that stuff. So it's just a really sweet time. But even to what you said earlier about just like Christians, like really supposed to be an example. Um, so I have an example of what not to do as a Christian during this time. So I was in Aldi's, my wife gets on me for saying it wrong, in the grocery store, whatever. And some woman, there was actually a few, it's like two black women. And one was wearing a cross T-shirt. So I guess that was her way of being like, look, I'm gonna let people know this is who they need to be turning to during this time, which was cool.
yeah,
Then there was another older woman that kind of scolded this younger, she was probably a millennial. She wasn't a Gen Z, a millennial, probably about 30 years old, and scolded the millennial for having too many packs of bagels in her cart and for having too much. And she didn't have a full cart. Her like a fourth of her cart was full, but I guess she saw that she had like a lot of one thing and was about to like, I guess she thought she was going to go off and buy the whole store. And she like scolded her, and she was like, "You don't need to be panicking. You know who you're feeding." And the young woman felt like she had to explain herself, and so she was saying, "Well, I have a niece and nephews that I need to feed as well. It's not just me and my husband and my kids." And so she was trying to, I guess, she felt like she had to defend herself, and then that conversation ended with the older woman kind of like saying, trust Jesus. And I'm like, that is not the way to share the gospel or to take advantage of an opportunity where someone clearly may or may not be in panic. I mean, who is receptive to the gospel after I just got done scolding them about, you're a fool for buying all these bagels? You know what I
yeah,
mean? And I was
yeah,
I was just so disgusted by that representation of a believer, so a so-called believer. I'm like, that's just not the way to do it. But to your point, though, as you said earlier, there is a way that we should just have a peace about us that should be communicating Christ. There should be just a lifestyle, that says, hey, we're prioritizing our families right now, and that should speak to non-believers and be like, there's something about that person that I'm missing, So, yeah,
yeah. I hope so. I hope that's happening.
yeah.
Uh, so I mean, what else you want to get into? Like we talked about the virus, a good amount, and I'm also one of those guys. Like, I don't during a time like this. And you need to have your thoughts on it. You need to have an informed opinion, I think. But at the same time, this shouldn't be something like the media is making it out to be, where it just consumes every minute of your life.
Right. Yeah.
And so that being said, like this probably won't be the last time I talk about it on the podcast, but I don't want to. This will hopefully be the last time that I talk about it in as detailed of a way that we did here.
Right.
Because I don't want to. I don't want to. You know.
It's like we're contributing to, because it's the same thing. I was watching, the news, and that's all it is, 24/7 now. There's nothing else. There's no break in the whole virus talk, and so we don't want to contribute to that same thing of just So
I mean, we could talk about some political stuff.
I think it's worth it.
Is it worth it?
I got some things to say.
All right, go ahead. You can go.
No, I think I'm just. We talked about this earlier. So if you, I don't know if have they ever heard us talk about politics? They've heard us talk about politics. We've done the end of the year review and all that stuff.
We didn't really get into anything though. It was
nothing deep. We talked about Trump a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody knows me, I'm not a huge fan of Trump. But Aaron knows that I've been coming around on a lot of things, and but yet still keeping my mind open to hopefully other potential candidates. And I'm one that's very hopeful about politics. And I think
should we give the people time, because you are black and you just said that you like some Trump stuff. So
yeah, let me let
give
you
give them a moment of silence.
Yeah, meditate on that for a second. But I think
they just turned us off anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, true. Yeah, this is the segment where they do that. I think obviously I've kept my mind open to other candidates because I'm very hopeful about finding a candidate that I can actually be proud of and be excited about to vote. And it just looks like this may be. I mean, this is only a third time voting in a presidential election.
Same here.
And I'm really this will be the first time that I'm genuinely I never thought that I'd get to the point where I'm just not going to vote. I hate that. I hate that excuse. I hate people that just do that, to be honest. Because even last time, we went through we walked that same line of okay, I don't want to vote for that guy or that woman, so let's find, even if I know, it's a wasted vote, I know I'm still fulfilling a duty and an opportunity and a freedom that we've been given. And so, but this time, man, I'm scared that I'm not gonna be able to cast my vote in a way where I'm proud, and that I'd rather just kind of not vote, but I also don't want to do that. So it's a really interesting time. And I remember having a conversation with a brother in the church, just about man, I'm waiting for the candidate where, they're just a strong believer and, they have some common sense. They're not left or right. They're just, a believer who has an idea about how to lead this country, has experience, whatever. And Mike they were Pence. Just yeah, okay. And they were just bro, that's never going to happen. You're crazy. And man, I don't want to give in or believe that, that hopelessness of just man, God's never going to allow a man to raise up or a woman to raise up and say, I want to follow Christ. And if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to run for the presidency of the United States. But I mean, I don't know. I think it's just too hopeful for a lot of people, but I want to believe that that's possible.
It's definitely possible that you get a candidate like that. And let's preface for the people saying, what we're really talking about are independent candidates. We're both fans of independent candidates. I voted independent last election. I'm pretty sure you did. We voted the same person.
Yeah.
So we're definitely open to that. Even understanding and realizing they're definitely not going to get elected. But the problem is with that mindset, if everybody voted for an independent that really didn't want to vote for one of the two main ones, then they're actually and it was a pretty agreed upon, like one independent was the favorite, and a lot of people, if everybody that had that mindset actually voted for that person, you'd actually see somebody that like they would actually be in the running. But because so many people fall to where they want to vote for an independent because they don't want to feel like they have to vote for one of the two, but then they're standing in front of the voters booth and they feel this pressure of like, oh, I don't want to throw my vote away, so they end up voting for one of the two. And that happens to so many people. Now that being said, I've had that mindset for a long time, and I've come a lot closer to where I'm most likely going to vote for Trump.
Right.
I can't believe I just said that on air.
But now.
I'm waiting for some feedback now for people from that once I put this out. And unsubscribers. But so we don't need to go in all detail because we don't need to go a whole lot longer talking about this. But I obviously have my reasons. I'm obviously somebody who has thought through this, and I have reasons for why that is. And like I said to Marcus earlier, I hate that because I'm generally a conservative, leaning, probably in an evangelical circle of Christians, and I'm a white guy, that I'm already people, and I just said that I'm probably a supporter of Trump. People right now, they just threw me in a box.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate that they think I came to that conclusion only because I kind of fall under the typical. No, I came to that conclusion out of much amount of time thinking about this. Many considerations of what both sides have to say on many different issues. And just seeing generally how things are being handled. And I that's why I came to that conclusion. I'm still definitely not. I'm not throwing away the possibility of looking into independent candidates, because they really haven't put their names out there yet, and they probably won't for at least another couple months. Because they don't have a budget to run for a long time. But like what happened last election, the guy we voted for, Evan McMullen, once he came out and I looked into him, I really liked him. And I thought he would have been great. So he wasn't even on the ballot in Jersey, so we had to write him in. But even just from me, I think it might have been me I heard about him from somebody. Then from me talking about him with people and posting about him on Facebook, I think there's like 7 other people outside of me that voted for him because they had heard of him through things that I had put out.
And I was one of them.
So that can happen, that's how those things work. But that was a whole conversation that I'm not sure where we were going with that, but
you started about the whole putting in a box thing, and it's unfortunate.
It is, and again, I'm not somebody. You could fall into you could put anybody into a box, literally. Even the person that says, "I'm so anti-box, I hate being in there. Don't put me in a box." Guess what? You just went in the anti-box box.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So,
for sure.
So there's a box for everything. And when I say I generally, agree with evangelicals, conservative political leaning, I am not a Republican. I might never be a Republican, but may generally vote that way. Doesn't mean I agree with everything that any one of those boxes do or say. So we gotta. So
Yeah, you're
let's.
not beholden to the box. You are,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, or the party in this case.
Yeah. I have friends who are white guys, conservative politically, but also pretty libertarian with different ideas politically, and then in their biblical views, they're definitely not evangelical.
Right.
um, Same thing with yeah. So in other words, my point is, let's leave room for kind of give see if I can say it this way: give people the benefit of the doubt of hoping that they thought through these things.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and in other words, have those conversations to figure out if they have.
Right.
Uh, and because again, like biblically, that one friend I just mentioned, biblically, him and I disagree on some things. I think, but but I would point anybody to him for somebody to go to hear their thoughts on whatever it is, because I trust his wisdom, and that his wisdom is backed from a biblical standpoint, and he's grounded biblically when it comes to his input on life.
Mm.
So I have no problem pointing people to him.
Right.
Just like you and me differ on some things, and I would have no problem pointing people to you on your input on life situations.
Sure. Yeah.
Like we took that. I sent you that one political test
Oh yeah.
like a couple weeks ago to
Yeah.
see kind of like where you fall on the spectrum, and they had 4
Yep.
different blocks, and I kind of was in the middle of center and right, and you thought you were going to be, but you
Yeah.
actually were a little bit on the liberal side.
Yeah. Yeah. I was shocked.
And I sent you back. I was like, bro, we can't be friends anymore.
Right.
But see,
Exactly.
that's like
Yep.
that's how these things are. We're allowed to have different opinions.
Yeah, for sure.
As long as we realize that those things are opinions.
Right.
As long as you've thought through your opinions. And guess what? Your opinion can be wrong.
Yes.
You got it. You need to accept that too.
Yeah.
And
Feelings
also
are not facts.
yeah. At the end of the day, in all of these talks and debates and arguments, the one that matters most is where you fall on God and the Bible.
Right. Yep.
And Jesus. I mean, the same thing. But
Yep.
that's the one that matters. So as Christians, when you're talking politics and stuff, I would hope that you are aware, you're aware enough to realize that this is not the most important thing. This is not a main thing. You hear a lot of times, keep the main things the main things. This is not your political views and discussions and all and inputs are not the main thing. So like we've said many times, because I've asked you like you think it's okay if I wear a Trump shirt, and I'm not at the point I don't think where I would,
Right.
but I've just thrown it out there like, you think it's okay, and you were like, yeah, it's probably not wise to do, because it may hurt my witness to somebody. So it's stuff like that where have wisdom, be wise, read Proverbs. Guess what? You have time to read Proverbs, so do it.
There you go. Yeah, I think maybe we can finish up on this. One of the things I've been meditating on, researching about, is a theologian named Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah.
And so I've been preparing even before we were getting ready for this. Told you I was starting to write, and I'm writing something, along the lines of some of his theology, and how it should affect our not only our theology but our politics, which is essentially where I'm going with the article. And it, to me, is one of my favorite things that I've ever read from a theologian. And that, I mean, it's trumped C.S. Lewis, it's trumped John MacArthur, all these
names out there.
Yeah, right. Spurgeon. I read all this stuff that I can. I mean, not that I've dug too deep into any of them, but this has by far been probably my favorite digging into of a biography, of a life story, of biblical reflection. And I think the reason has been because I won't go too deep into his experiences, but he's had an experience in life that really left him always in a place of wrestling to understand what's God's will for any given moment. And really always considering people and other people, even if whether he knew them or not, whether he understood their culture or not. It was just, there's got to be something I can do as an advocate and on behalf of my brother and sister. And nothing else mattered. Even if he even got to the point where I would even say it's probably more sinful than not, to the point where he was willing to go to the point of sin, to care for a brother or sister in a way that he thought was Christ-like, even if it wasn't. So he really just had that heart. So not advocating that you go, to the measures of sin to care for someone, but that heart is really, I think, really cool. That we can just be so passionate about other people, that we would go to great lengths to know what God wants us to do on behalf of that brother or sister, to care for people. And I think that really should bleed into our politics as well. When we cast our vote, and we've talked about it before, I really think that our vote, especially as believers, a lot of people do vote for themselves. The majority of people will vote for themselves, for the family, how they're affected, how their job's affected, how their kids are affected. And I really think that as believers, we really have to kind of rethink that and shape that into, obviously it should include myself, because as a believer, I want to make sure that we still have the rights to worship as we please, and so on and so forth. But really, we need to think about other people and what their needs are, and how maybe that they can be served when we cast our vote. So, yeah.
Agree. Let's for the people. What was I going to say? Oh, let's for the people, because we're going to close this up.
Yep.
Let's give some just resources for this time that they could check out.
Yeah.
Books, podcasts, music, whatever, movies, shows, whatever it is that you're into, or you're going to get into right now. Like, let's give people some stuff they might want to check out.
Sure. So first, I guess I'll do a shameless plug for Gospel and Culture. Aaron and I and Alyssa Jones are teamed up to just provide content for believers, to just stay encouraged, keep your mind kind of intrigued and growing biblically. So it's a online media ministry, if you will. So Alyssa writes devotionals, which have been even very impactful for my life, just to read some of the stuff that she writes. Aaron has written an article for us, as well as we have a few podcasts on the site that we've done together. And then I tend to write some articles, just kind of biblical reflection, theological reflection. And Aaron's dug into some apologetics as well on the site. So it's a really cool tool, really just for, kind of loving God with your mind, if you will. That's what I tend to think that our site is. And then also, I think
what's that website, bro?
I probably should say it right. It's www.gospel-and-culture.com. So go check that out. I'll try to, if you follow me on Facebook, Marcus Tatum, find me. I'll make sure I have the link posted, as well as my wife. Actually, she's the youth worship leader at our church. She just put that together, a playlist for our youth, which she also realized probably be just good for anybody. To really be encouraged through this time. And so I'm probably going to post that as well on Facebook, so that anybody who may be encouraged by that, can kind of just go through that playlist of worship and just music that is ultimately reminding you of the goodness of God. So those are some personal resources that I know that we are involved with that I think could be helpful.
100%. Yeah,
And of course the Bible too.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
How you liking that Bible I sent you at Christmas time?
Dude, oh my goodness, I am in love with it. It's hard. I'm really picky about Bibles. I think you've probably gauged that with me for a while. So even with like, we both bought the CSB Apologetics Bible, and I really have. I mean, I've used it, and it's been a really cool resource. But I'm not like super excited about it when I go to open it. But man, the Tony Evans Study Bible that you got me, man, I love that thing. So
I still haven't gotten one. I'm
yeah,
gonna do it.
yeah,
But
we gotta make sure you get one of those.
I'm on a strict budget.
Yeah, I feel you. Aren't we all?
And since
Yeah.
I already have about 12 Bibles, my wife's like, why do
Do
you
you
need
need
another
another one?
Bible?
Yeah, of course.
Um, all right, so I'm gonna name off some stuff that I've just. Well, you got anything else like, books, movies, music, anything?
Oh, well, movies. That documentary that I mentioned earlier, which you also know about, Alyssa shared with us, American Gospel.
Mm.
Please go check that out. It is so good. That is literally, I mean, again, one of the lines in the movie is, "Don't assume everybody understands the gospel, even if they're a believer."
I struggled with
And
that for a while.
yeah, yeah, and I think that you know, we also have to understand. This is another line that it's not just for the unbeliever. It's not just for the lost person. The gospel is for believers to reflect on each and every day, and to really let that continue to sink deep into our souls what Christ really did for us, and what that means, and how we should respond. Um, oh, you might have lost me.
No, I got
How
you.
we should respond. Okay, yeah, how we should respond to that truth.
American Gospel.
American Gospel. You can find I think the first hour for free on YouTube. So go ahead and just search that, and then I think you can buy the full 2 hour and 20 minute documentary on I think Amazon Video, Amazon Movies, whatever it's called. You can buy it on Apple, iTunes. Yeah, so go check that out. It's definitely worth it.
Um, keep talking for a second because I'm
Yeah, no, you're good.
trying to find something.
I think one of the other things the documentary kind of tapped on was the prosperity gospel, and it kind of put it in its proper place. That it is not a true gospel; that it is a false gospel that ultimately does hurt people. I think that a lot of times people think that we're bashing people just to bash people, or that we're saying, "Oh, you're a false teacher," just to call you a false teacher and kind of ruin your life or ruin your ministry. And that's not at all the case. It is very important that people don't get sucked in by a false gospel because it is very harmful. And the documentary does a good job of really showing the harm that it can do, not only for the people involved in it, but for people that really do, believe it and get sucked into it because they haven't, believe it or not, actually heard the true gospel. So,
Yeah, that's so true. The more you plug yourself into walking with people, the more you figure that out.
yeah,
You
yeah,
see that. So I'm somebody that's big on podcasts and big on audiobooks, and so I'll name a few of those. And some music. So music right now that would be very interesting, especially if you like rap. Flame came out with an album called Extra Nos. It's a theology very heavy album, and it's very interesting. You may not agree with it, but you'll definitely find it interesting because Flame is somebody who came from a heavy Reform Calvinist standpoint to now where he's Lutheran. So the whole out literally it's a whole rap album about that transition and the disagreements and areas where he was struggling and now where he thinks he's found a better spot and that whole thing. It's very interesting. I'm not going to say I agree with all of it, but again, check that out.
yeah.
Flame Extra Nose. If you even want just music to just sit and think about. And then for audiobooks, I'm looking at my list in front of me. A few books that I've gone through the last month or two. one had a major impact, and we talked a lot about family earlier. And this book's called Family Driven Faith by Vodi Bakum. Family Driven Faith. I highly recommend that, especially if you're a parent and especially if you're a dad.
Yeah.
Not even actually, you don't even need to be a dad, but especially if you're just
a man, Christian man.
You need to read this book.
Yeah.
Also, along the family lines, Family Revision by Jeremy Pryor. Both of these books kind of give a very similar message. So I highly recommend those. And I actually have more on this podcast coming from Jeremy Pryor, so stay tuned. Anyway.
Yeah. Let me add something to the family book section.
Yeah.
So Vadi also came out with a book called Family Shepherds, which my wife actually got me for my birthday. So definitely check that out as well. It's kind of, I'm sure, very much along the same lines, but really is specifically for the husband, for the father. So if you're a Christian man, definitely tap into that. I haven't even cracked it open yet, but I know Vadi, and I know it's got to be, it's got to be really biblical. It's going to be really encouraging. So,
another one that I got for free with my Audible subscription. It's called Caffeine: How Caffeine Created the Modern World. By Michael Pollan. It was a free book from last month, I think, and it's a short one, but it was very interesting, and the history of caffeine and kind of the rise of it, and also the rise of some other things and how they could be linked, but also the downside of it actually ends kind of on a downside of caffeine, because basically as almost as a society we're just hooked on it.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Another very interesting book, which has made me it makes you rethink a lot of things, even if you're a very studied Christian. It's called Unseen Realm by Dr. Michael Heiser, and I don't even want to say anything about that book because I don't want to give a wrong perception of it. But so you got to check that out because it's very interesting. And like I told you leading up to this, I just started the book by Charlie Kirk, The MAGA Doctrine, MAGA, The MAGA Doctrine. So we'll see. It's called The MAGA Doctrine: The Only Ideas That Will Win the Future. So we'll see where that goes. But podcasts. I've been listening to a lot of Charlie Kirk, the Charlie Kirk podcast. I've been listening to a lot of the Babylon Bee. Did you know they had a podcast?
I did, but I can't imagine what that'd be like. So I didn't even bother.
It's interesting and it's pretty funny. If you have this sense of humor, it's funny. Okay. The Babylon Bee. I've been listening to. Did you know that the Christian rappers Flame and The Truth came out with a podcast together?
No.
Yeah,
that's gotta be
you gotta check that out. It's called.
Will do.
It's called Complicated-ish.
Okay.
Complicated-ish.
I'll check it out for sure.
That's very good. And they talk a lot about these things, a lot of topics that, like, in Christian circles, we don't talk about this because it's very good.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
There was one more. 30 minutes with the Perrys, or what's it called?
Yeah, 30. I think that's what it is. 30 minutes with the Perrys. I think that's what it's called.
That's Jackie Hill Perry and Preston Perry.
Yeah.
They're a theology heavy couple.
For sure.
But they're funny too.
Yeah.
And they're very open with each other, but also with just how they think about life and how they go about things. So obviously you're getting the wife's perspective, the woman's perspective, and the husband and the man's perspective.
Right.
and they don't sugarcoat anything. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, they're really theology heavy, but yet they're very practical and
Yeah.
relevant. Like you can relate. It's not
Yeah.
for like, you don't have to be in the theology like to listen to their podcast. They're very everyday people, and they're just talking about the truths of God. So how it applies to your life, which is important.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff.
What should I name this podcast? Does this fall under my thinking out loud, or is this different?
Yeah, I know. I like the thinking out loud for this too.
Okay.
Unless you could think of something better, I don't know.
Nah, we'll roll with something that's been working.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that.
All right, bro. Well, plug what you got to plug, and then I'll finish.
Yeah. Plug. So actually, one last resource. Hopefully, my wife and I will do a podcast today, and we'll be putting that out tonight. So the topic is actually about. It's funny. It kind of sounds like still haven't gotten the title yet, but essentially it's about faith healers, and we're going to kind of talk about what that's about and why a lot. I was
reading about that last night.
Yeah, and why a lot of those cause some issues with those who maybe trust in them, believe them. Not all of them are fake, right? But we're going to discuss that. We're going to read from John 5 and pick apart what we can about that topic. So check that out tonight. The Gospel and Culture podcast also can be found on, again, gospel and what did I say? Gospel and culture.com. So go check that out.
Don't forget the dashes.
Yeah, don't forget the dashes. Couldn't afford $2,000 domain name, so you got dashes. So definitely go check that out when you guys get a chance. So
cool. Oh yeah, mention who else you write for.
Oh, so I also have the awesome privilege to write for the Christian Post. So I still only have one article out with them right now, but I've been working on a book or a chapter of a book that is coming out through their publishing division, which is, I believe, the V-Day, that's how you pronounce it, V-Day Press. And so that book is actually on religious liberty in America and the struggle for religious liberty in America. And so I wrote a really, what I think is an awesome commentary on how we believers should really react and respond to what is a very real struggle. But I also think that we should be responding in such a way that is very Christ-like. So,
yep, that's good.
Yeah.
Follow me, subscribe to this podcast.
Yes.
True Strength Life podcast on all platforms. True Strength Apparel on Instagram, truestrengthapparel.com. You can find this, the hat, many more things. I need to get some True Strength Life gear on my True Strength Apparel website.
Yeah, I didn't do that. Podcast, right?
I didn't do that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're good.
Yeah, man. It was good chatting with you.
Yeah, you too, bro. I'll be talking to you soon, all right?
Sounds good.
See you.
All right, see you.